My heart in education is for social emotional learning and development of children. And I am not an expert. I am a practitioner alongside all of you. So I'm willing to share what I know, what I've learned, what I see as best practices. Um, but I really, want this to be a space where you can ask questions and we can dialogue about it and share a little bit of what I know and what I've learned and what I experience in the classroom. Um, because it is such a passion topic of what I do as my role. So as Nathan said, I teach third grade at a school called the Academy for Global Citizenship. It's in Archer Heights, so kind of down by Midway, and it is a very holistic school. It's something that drew me there and why I very passionately work at that school. We put as much focus and drive and attention as we do on social emotional development as we do academic development, and that's really what I believe is at the heart of education. And so it is a unique school in that way, but we really are encouraged to explore all of the ways we can help our students develop emotionally, to create the community that we need for successful learning, to have spiritual wellness, health wellness, all of these pieces. So our school actually has like a wellness wheel that we base everything off of. So it's a pretty unique setting for that, but that's not where I've worked for my whole career. So, I've seen how this is applicable in your home. I see it in my own children. I'm a mom of two young kids, young little ones. I have a 3-year-old daughter and a 9-month-old son. So even seeing kind of the transpiring of taking some of these skills that I work with in the elementary school aged kids, but also what does that look like as it trickles down even to, myself having an early preschooler, and what a powerful tool it is when it becomes embedded in what you're doing in your home, as well as what they're getting presented with at school, and having, again, that kind of holistic front to it. I really see my job as fostering skills that kids can be successful in emotional development and in the ability to create relationship, right? If I want them to be the best readers they can be, they need to be able to have a conversation about books. But to have a conversation about books, you need to be able to talk to peers. In order to talk to peers, you have to be able to solve problems. So it has this kind of like ripple effect of what best practices of this social emotional mean, and why it's such a backbone within the education realm, and really why we're talking about it tonight, knowing that we're in this unique setting of school, that school is looking so different. How are we fostering kind of this emotional and social interaction and engagement for school age kids in the world we're in today? So because I'm a teacher, I am in this with you. I am online full time. Today was my first day, as well as all other CPS. So sitting behind my computer screen, troubleshooting in third grade in my school. We've introduced Google Classroom. They were on Seesaw last year, so it's like all new. I'm like, click here, screen share. Like we are doing the ins and outs of it. So I applaud you, parents. I know that this is such a unique time. So I really hope that this can give you a few tools to make the year feel more successful for you. Really, my goal in starting as we kind of roll out is just giving us some kind of like common definition that we can use. I don't want to get going too quickly without us feeling like we have maybe an agreement of what we're talking about when we say social emotional learning. Like, what is that? I know it's become such a buzzword. You hear it in schools, but like, why are we only hearing it in schools? Where is it elsewhere? What does it mean in our home? So when we're saying social emotional learning, it's really these 5 components here. It's that, can children understand and manage their emotions? Can children display empathy for others? Can they set goals and work towards them and achieve them? So, right, some kids are really good goal setters. They're great dreamers, but do they have any set sort of motivation and self-starting attitudes? So it's kind of that set goal setting and achievement, making relationship decisions, and then maintaining those relationships in a healthy way. So that kind of is the backbone of what we're going to talk about, but also just at large. When you hear people saying this, right? SEL, social emotional learning, this is kind of the backbone of, at least in the education world, and what I've come to learn in my studies of what we're talking about. And so really, when we're looking at these relationships and these pieces of social emotional learning, it is a skill. I think that is the first thing I always like to talk about with this with parents, is that just like reading as a skill, it's something we teach and we model and we practice. And I think so often these things in human nature, for adults even, right? We see that like sometimes adults don't fit in these buckets very well, but it's something that like we are actively giving tools for kids to be successful in. And so if we want our kids and our students to say, hey, let's display empathy. Like, what does that actually mean? Do they know what empathy is? Have you given them tools for practicing that? Have they seen models of what it is? And so really breaking down this path, this idea that whether it's within the school day or in your home, that if we want our kids to be better readers, right, we teach them sight words. We break down the phonetics of it. We have an early reader. Then we go into conversations around books and we break down the comprehension, and we're able to see how these skills kind of scaffold and build. Well, the social emotional learning like shouldn't be any different, right? What does empathy look like at the heart? Okay, well, how do I get my kid to understand caring for others? And how do I get them to understand feelings? Oh, okay, what questions can I model to be asking? And there's bumps in the road and there's questions, and it's a growth process. And so a lot of that for me in this practical ways of what is this looking like for my own children and in my classroom is some things you might see your kids doing in their classrooms, or I hope they're doing, right? Check-ins, a way to say, hey, how are you feeling today? Oh, that goes right to that number one. Like, can you manage your emotions? Are you aware of it? The self-awareness piece. Are you aware of what you're feeling? Can you tell others what you're feeling? And then it starts to bleed into that number two. As a listener, as an active listener, do I have any feelings about what people are sharing with me? And so these start to kind of have these really simple things you either hopefully are hearing the teachers doing with your students, and things that you can be doing at home as well to help manage these pieces of development in your child. So the idea of having intentional check-ins. Some families do that at the dinner table each night, right? How are we feeling? How was your day? What were, roses or thorns? There's different ways of building this into your family life. But again, that we're hoping teachers are doing as well. Other ways that it looks like is using story times as teachable moments. Oh, I noticed this character. Okay, well, when that happened with that character, how do you think the character's feeling? Right? Maybe it's observing the picture, the illustration of the character. Well, what does that make me feel as the reader? And this idea that empathizing, we can role play it with characters in books or in little clips in TV shows. That can be a really practical tool for helping look at, oh, okay, what if it's not just this fictional character? What if it's actually my classmate? And what if it's actually this real scenario? Or what if it's me and I'm needing to receive empathy because I'm having a hard time managing my emotions, right? And so kind of this number one and two has this like beautiful oscillation between I can name my emotions and I can understand what I'm feeling, but then how does that also go into that other people have emotions and how do I receive them and respond to them? So kind of these practical tools there. And then when I think about, number 4 and 5 specifically about making relationship decisions, maintaining healthy relationships, we know as adults that relationships have conflict and that conflict can be healthy. But our job as adults is to model healthy conflict. And so teaching our kiddos, hey, I feel this way, right? Number 1, can I name my emotion? I feel frustrated or mad or upset. And now how am I going to manage that to maintain a healthy relationship with who I feel mad, angry, sad, upset, frustrated with, is such an important piece of that, like this interconnectedness between these, like all these pieces of social emotional learning. And so again, some practical ways that I do that in my classroom, I model with my students and I do it with my kids, even my daughter at home, this of giving them talking stems or speaking stems that can help give them the words when they're beginning to practice this skill. So one I use all the time with my students is, I don't like it when you blink. Would you instead please blink? Right? So let's say a student or a sibling, right? If your kids have siblings at home, they snatch a pencil, a toy, whatever it is, right? When I'm in classroom with my students, if somebody's interrupted or they took a supply that you want, instead of saying, no, stop that, he this, he did that, the idea that you can empower our students and our children to name their own emotions without needing an adult to interfere. Like, there's so much power in the control for a child to say, you made me feel this way, and that's not okay. And so we can give them the tools they need by giving them sentence starters. I do that again as a reading teacher. I give them tools. Here's how it could start to sound when I'm writing, right? I give them the beginning of the sentence. So let's give them those same tools in social emotional learning. I didn't like it that you took my pencil without asking. Next time, could you please ask before you take my supplies? How powerful for any child to be able to say how it made them feel and ask for something they want differently. Same thing with maintaining healthy relationships and making decisions about their relationships is like apologizing, right? That's a really important social emotional skill that we teach children. But instead of this idea that like, hey, we just blanket apologize, and then what do most humans say when someone apologizes? It's okay. Don't worry about it. No, like that's the last thing. I was just listening to like the best Brene Brown podcast about this, where she partnered and they were doing a whole podcast on apologizing. And it's like, no, it's not okay. That's why you had to apologize. That's why my feelings got hurt, because what you did wasn't okay. So let's actually give kids tools and sentence stems instead of saying it's okay, right? Saying, thank you for apologizing, right? I appreciate that you apologized. Next time, I hope that doesn't happen, because instead you'll ask me, right? But naming this idea that like we can own and empower our feelings, and it sounds heady, right? It sounds even hard as an adult, but like it's possible. My 3-year-old at bath time tonight, right, looked at me and said, Mom, I feel frustrated. I'm not ready to wash my hair and you're rushing me. Right. And it's so simple and it seems so silly, but like it is giving her this autonomy and empowerment of her voice and her feelings that I'm not naming them for her. Now, just because you name your emotions as a child doesn't mean everything's going to go just the way you are, but we're giving them the tools to understand what they're feeling, to say what they're feeling, and then to connect in relationship out of those feelings. Yeah, that we kind of have this understanding of what are those 5 pieces that we're talking about. And then we'll kind of jump into why it's so important. So we're going to go into kind of what is this development, why is it so important? But those are just kind of those 5 pieces of what we're actually talking to develop. Unlocking Us with Brene Brown is the podcast, okay. And it's it was on May 6th. It was released. You know, the piece here is great. We understand these pieces: manage their emotions, display empathy, maintain healthy relationships. But like, hopefully we all see like that those have a value, but really looking at, in this unique time of COVID, in this unique time of e-learning, like why is this kind of more important than ever? And so my opinion in the matter, again, like I'm just sharing my learnings and my opinions of what I see so valuable, is that when we're looking at SEL development, it truly is bringing it back to the whole child. Right? We want our children, our students, our kids in our home, or the kids in our community or in church to be developing into capable, caring, and committed community members. That's kind of like what I always come back to. And so in order to do that, of course, as an educator, I want nothing more than the students in my classroom to feel successful in reading. But if I get to the end of the year and I have a kiddo who's grown in their reading levels and still cannot name their emotions, manage their emotions, and talk about how they're feeling, they're not going to be successful to use those skills, right? If I have a kiddo in my classroom, or you have a kiddo in your home, or one of your children who is like super developed in this one area, but like has meltdowns over not being able to name what's going on inside of them, like we want to be able to marry these things together and see that they actually are an asset and play off of each other, right? They have a equal importance, because when children can feel safe and regulated and secure in what they're feeling and who they are, they can then take risks. And then they feel okay to get things wrong and have failure because they feel secure in that. And so it has this like teeter-totter, right? It goes back and forth between what they feel and how they can name their feelings and then interact with others, and how that's going to help propel them in their academics. And so specifically, as you're thinking about kind of this idea of social emotional learning, like The academics is so important, but if we do it without this SEL, especially with this time of e-learning where there's so much trauma and so many triggers and breakdowns and feeling out of control for our kids, right? They're not in control of anything. That if we're not naming those things and giving them the control back in the areas that are safe and giving them skills to help manage these things, that the academics is not really going to even, in my opinion, surface to the way it could or to lead to the potential it could. So when I look at this holistic development, I really like this graphic of just these 4 simple pieces, right? We want to give kids choice. We want to help them understand conflict so they can set goals and set healthy habits, right? I kind of like think of it in a circle a little bit. Obviously, it's not a circle. You can jump all around. And so at the crux of, if we want empathetic kiddos who can manage their emotions and maintain healthy relationships, like what are the skills that we need them to develop? And so I've identified here like the 4 main skills that I've read about and I've researched and done work on of thinking about this holistic development in SEL. Kids need to have self-awareness. They need to build self-management skills, have social awareness. And we can't really have a social awareness if we're not aware of ourselves because it's a relationship. So it has to kind of start with that self-awareness. And then again, this ability to make decisions, because some social interactions aren't safe or aren't healthy, and I need to be able to make a decision about that. And so when we're looking at these pieces of self-management, social awareness, it is helping kids develop the best version of themselves, right? It's going to help them see that they have choice, coming back to this idea of choice, especially in this time of COVID. So they're feeling the weight and the turmoil of this, but as adults, we're equipped to say, I feel anxious and I'm having a hard time sleeping, right? Like that's, hey, if we're coming to the table, that's me right now, right? Like I'm a CPS teacher. I don't know which is up. Like I feel anxious. I'm having a trouble sleeping and it's making me do this or this. But like I'm a regulated adult who's had practice in this, and our kids don't know how to name those things. And so when we see them not sleeping well, or we see them having these little moments and we're like, that's not like them, we need to come to it from a place of noticing, hey, they're dysregulated. What can I do as a parent to help re-regulate, to model, and to give them tools to re-regulate? And so we are really wanting to think about giving back control where we can and giving choice where we can in our homes. And again, my hope is that educators are doing this. In a little bit, I'll go into what I would recommend or some questions or tips to do to ask the teachers you're working with for parents who are doing navigating e-learning right now. And we can kind of transition to that in a minute, but kids can't regulate what they can't identify, right? I can't ask a kid to manage emotions if they don't even know what the emotion is and why they're feeling it. And so again, our job is to model it and give back. So I'm going to talk through, I just brainstormed a quick brainstorm of a few things as an educator I'm doing and as a parent I'm doing during this time to kind of speak to some of these. So kind of the first thing as an educator and as a parent, I would encourage, if you haven't already done so, for self-management in this time of e-learning, is give your kiddo some control and choice over setting up a learning space. Like have a designated learning space. What materials do they need? Maybe some of that's coming from the teacher. Maybe some of that is brainstormed by you as a parent and your kiddo together. Are there certain posters they want to create on the wall that they could hang next to their learning space, right? One of those ideas is, it was my first day of school assignment. Some of my kiddos made like an emoji dictionary. So they made their own emotions poster to hang in their learning space. Here's this emotion, and here's what it means, and here's what I can do if I feel this way. So having this visual already of like, and so my kids created these they had to do it off the computer because I'm like trying to manage computer screen time. And so they were drawing and creating labels for things. And like their first thing was like, hang it up in your workspace and take a picture of it for me, right? I want you to feel powered that like you put pen to paper, you put different emotions down, you got to pick which ones would be important. Now, different age levels, it might be appropriate at different ways, but there's ways to adapt something like that. So really giving them a chance to then have self-awareness over naming those emotions and having a visual to it is really helpful for kids. So if they don't have the words, because in a meltdown or in a moment of frustration in school, or in a moment of, I don't know the link and I can't hear my teacher and I can't follow along with this class, like they're not going to be able to quickly identify, I'm feeling overwhelmed. but having a visual that they can point to and say, well, it's not that one. I'm not sad. I'm not actually angry. Oh, it may be this one, right? It can help kind of, it's not this one, it's not that one. Like, what is it the closest to? And so giving kids language to be self-aware is something we can do as a parent and something we can do as educators to like be the adult for them to model it. So that's one idea. Another one is really working on steps to re-regulate. And again, giving kids choice in this. Think brainstorming together. When I'm feeling X, what can I do? How can I be empowered to feel differently? Right? When I'm feeling nervous, what can I do? What can I be in control of? So maybe it's something about physical space and having like a safe activity to do. For some kids, it's as simple as like, I need some nature, right? I need to like take 10 minutes and breathe in some fresh air. I know as an adult, sometimes that's for me. For my daughter, we've taught her different breathing exercises and like it is her go-to. At 3 years old, she'll say, Mommy, I need to take a break. And she'll sit and she'll take like, and I'll hear her counting and breathing. And then she'll come back and say, I'm feeling so much better. Can I rejoin you? And like, it sounds so kind of cheesy and calculated, but like, it's powerful because she feels like it's something she can make a choice to do for herself when she needs it. And so giving this idea of how can we create these like tools and little activities or different conversations around giving choice to be self-aware and to self-manage. And then kind of the next step of this human relationship and the social awareness and decision making about that is, you know, brainstorming and talking to your kids. I know we're in the long haul, like month 7, day 4,000, who knows what we're at in this like weird quarantine COVID world. But this idea that having conversations around like what are ways we can engage in a relationship, even though it's looking friendly. And I know like online platforms have been the tool, but there's also a lot of other creative ways. Like I have seen some kiddos that I've talked to who are like doing a pen pal with their grandparents or a pen pal with a friend. And like the power of putting something pen to paper and like drawing a picture and putting it in the mail, even though it's super slow. And, you know, like that there's other creative ways for the absence of the human connection they're having in the classroom. Could they be like, could their best friend in them do snail mail? They set up like an email account that's not attached to their school account that they can use like just for interacting with those friendships. And so having it not feel like it's only like glued to the screen because they're already getting so much screen time. And I know as an adult, I want to talk to my friends and I get off of a call all day with my students on video calls. And I'm like, I don't want to have a video call with friends. Like that does not sound like a good use of human connection. So as a family, like there's a lot of ways you could brainstorm alternatives, right? This like snail mail idea, or I know different people feel different comfortabilities about, you know, having outdoor gatherings or things like that. But just, it's not about what you're doing. It's about you're having a conversation about it with your child and together talking about how it's making them feel that we're living in this time and not being able to connect, right? In the first week of school, parents, at some point, I would urge you this week to ask your kiddo, regardless of their age, like, how does it make you feel that you're not in connection with your classmates this week? That would be a really powerful question that I think could open some interesting conversations with your, I keep calling them students, with your children. Because it's coming back to, are they aware? Do they know how they're feeling? How do you think your classmates feel? Is there anyone in your class that you think is having a hard time with this e-learning? Right? Displaying empathy for others and thinking about how do other people feel right now. Have you noticed any of your classmates that like you haven't seen logging in online? What do you think we could do? Do you think we could like reach out to them or encourage them to be a part of it? Right. And so this idea that like there's this folding in, that like social emotional learning is not any of these one of 5 things in isolation. It's like the integration of all of them. That like by becoming more self-aware, I want to be more empathetic. And when I'm more empathetic, I'm developing healthier relationships. And when I have healthier relationships, I know how to manage conflict. And so it's like this cycle back and forth. So those are kind of some of those pieces. I really, as an educator, I have so much respect for parents, and I know every school and every classroom relationship is different, but like I urge you parents, like speak up and ask your students' parent. I'm gonna, not your students' parents, you're their parents. Ask your children's teacher What are the plans for social emotional engagement this year in this time? That is a very valid question. That is something that schools should be proactively planning for. And I would push and challenge that, like, it should not be in isolation. Social emotional learning is the backbone of all learning, right? It is part of reading. It is part of inquiry. It is part of doing whole group projects, or I mean, whole group experience or small group projects. Like, it is the backbone of all of it. And a lot of schools teach it a little bit in isolation. It's like, oh, we have a 20-minute time of the day where we have social emotional hour. And it's like, okay, that could be good if it's like just an exposure or a mini lesson or giving them one of these tools, but then asking and challenging, great, how is it going to be embedded? What can I be doing? Like, how can I use that same language that you're using on these calls that I can use at home? So I really want, like, from the teacher, CPS teacher perspective, like, I urge you, like, ask that question. I think you're going to get a lot of respect from the teacher saying, wow, I'm so glad I have a partner in this, right? These parents are passionate about this. They feel like it's not from a pushy or challenging mindset. It's more of like, hey, I have my child's best interest in heart. I'm trusting you have my child's best interest in heart. And more than ever this year, like, we're partners in this. So tell me what you're doing so that I can, like, echo things at home, right? That language in social emotional learning is really important. So that's one thing I would also urge you. And then kind of my last big piece when I think about this for kids is this idea of growth mindset. Again, like, another buzzword, but in social emotional development, we need to give our children grace that, like, this does not happen overnight. It is going to be an accumulation of skills and an accumulation of them feeling empowered to use these words, right? It's almost like learning a new language, right? It's like, okay, I feel confident to, like, put a sentence together now. And like, oh, I understood the question, but I don't feel ready to speak it out. Or, it's like building all of these pieces. And so if you're working with your child at home around naming their emotions, great. Then the next step is like, can they name it and explain it? Great. If you can name it and explain it, then the next step is I'm going to help you go, now what do you want to do about it? Right? Again, you're giving them the choice. I'm not telling you what to do about it. I'm here to help you be safe and regulate it and to prompt you if you're stuck. But, like, I'm not actually here to tell you what to do about it. I'm saying, what do you want to do about it? And I can give you options. Well, we could do this or we could do this. But, like, again, putting back as much control into our children's hand during this time where they feel out of control is going to be so critical in them feeling regulated and that they understand this weird world that we're in. And then, just like I said at the beginning, like, check-ins is such a powerful thing I do in the classroom. And I would imagine a lot of your kiddos will be doing throughout small groups or interfaces with teachers. But, like, there's so much power in check-ins in your home as well, right? Like, hey, how are you feeling? In my classroom, I do what we call fist to 5, right? It's such a teachery thing, but you could do it at home, right? Fist is a 0, 5 is like, I'm on top of the world. And, like, we norm, like, okay, well, if I'm just, like, grumpy, I'm not a fist, right? A fist could be like a tragedy, an emergency, a devastation, right? A 5 is like elation. Again, oh, let's give words to these numbers. Let's give emotions to these numbers, right? I'm overjoyed, I'm devastated, and helping develop their vocabulary around emotions. And so that could be a really simple thing to try out this week. Hey, if we're a fist to 5, let's go around the dinner table. How's everyone feeling right now? And let's say what number I am and why I am that way. And so practicing these little routines to help children name. I have to stop and think, what am I feeling? And why do I feel it? And then I need to communicate it to others. And once I get more comfortable with that, I'm going to be way more comfortable hearing other people say, I'm a 2 today. And hopefully we're seeing our children go, oh, they're a 2. I wonder why they're a 2. What can I do to check in on that friend? And now we've come back to this, like, whole circle of those 5. I've named my emotions. I've communicated my emotions. I'm displaying empathy, and I'm engaging in healthy relationship and then maintaining that relationship. So kind of those are some of those pieces that I would say. The last one that I haven't touched a lot on is that goal setting. That was in that first slide. One of the 5 was about setting goals and being able to achieve them. I think that's where, in my experience and what I would recommend, this idea of that growth mindset. A new book was just released. I just ordered it for my home with my daughter, but then I'll be reading it to my students as well. I actually don't know the author. I'm embarrassed to say, as a reading teacher, I'm like all about the author. But it's called The Magical Yet. I just ordered it and it's beautiful. But it's all about this magic, right? It's called yet. And so in my classroom, a rule is you can't say, I don't know. You can say, I don't know yet. This idea that like we are growing and we are evolving, and like part of that growth is failure and getting things wrong. And you as an individual, right? As adults, we struggle with this. Kids definitely struggle with it. In order to feel successful, I have to be okay with having times of failure. That's part of being regulated and being secure and feeling empowered in my emotions, is that I feel okay and safe. This idea of safety. I feel safe in saying I don't know yet. And so it's this cute story. I mean, I'm going to read it to my third graders, 8 and 9-year-olds. I've read it with my 3-year-old daughter. I could imagine it even being higher than that, 10, 11. Angela Detelazeri, but it's this cover. It's very cute. But it's just a fun little storybook. If you're a family who like loves, again, we just said you can learn through characters. It's a fun book, but this idea of giving the kids the language to include yet when things are hard, right? I don't know how to do this yet. And reframing, there's such power in language. So as we're teaching kids how to name their emotions, we can also teach them that in goal setting and trying to achieve goals, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't gotten there yet. What's the next step? Right? How do I want to achieve this? Great. Let's break it down. If I'm going to do this, I'm sure you've all heard of like SMART goals, that things need to be specific and measurable, right? Are they realistic? Is it timely? I'm not remembering what the A is right now. But as you go through that with kiddos, like it's breaking it down into really achievable steps. If I want to increase my reading level, or, if they've set out something individual, it's like, okay, let's break that down. How are we going to be able to do that in the next 2 months? Oh, okay. So I'm going to read every day for 30 minutes. Okay. That's so important. Practicing is important, but I can't just read. Reading doesn't just mean, okay, I'm going to have a conversation about it. I'm going to ask questions when I'm unsure, like giving them a breakdown of how to get there. I think so often for kids setting goals, they're afraid of failure, or they don't know what to do when they fail. And so it just stops, right? They don't feel secure. They don't feel safe anymore. And so we just shut down because that was hard and I feel vulnerable. And so I freeze. And they set this goal because they have these dreams and they don't know even how to start. I know I do that as an adult, so I'm sure kids do that, right? It's like, I want this. And then I'm like, okay, how do I actually get there? What do I actually do? And so when I think about that one kind of spoke on the wheel of the setting goals and working to achieve them, this idea of growth mindset and helping our kids realize it's a yet thing. Not everything's going to happen immediately. It'll get there. I just can't do it yet. I don't know the answer yet. And then the second one of helping them break down a goal. Okay, what are our steps in order to get there? And so if they're feeling, I'm sure if you're not, you all are superstars and I want to learn from you next, like overwhelmed this week with all of this new interface and all of these new Google Meets links and where are my assignments posted and how do I, great, I don't know how to do this yet. Let's write a list of what are the things that we need to troubleshoot, and then let's put them in order. How are we going to do that? Because my goal is that I feel independent and empowered on my online learning. Great. So let's break that down. What can I help you with? And then how can you feel empowered to do kind of those next steps independently? And then just my like educator encouragement. I feel like all of my parents that I'm engaging with that are my students' parents is this idea of like realistic expectations for yourself as a family. The health of your family is more important than any assignment that your kid is going to complete this year. Like as a teacher, I give that like full permission that like the health of your family is more important than anything, and the social emotional health and physical health of your child is there's more at stake there, and there's more importance there than like if they miss a reading lesson. And so you are the keepers in a lot of ways. As teachers, we're delivering the content. I'm committed to giving your child the absolute best content and the curated instruction and the small group support and the troubleshooting. That's my job. But as a parent, it's a unique year. You're the keepers of your house. right? Like I have third graders today raising their hand, like, can I go to the bathroom? I'm like, you're at home, do what you want to do. Like, I'm not dismissing you, but like you're home with them all day. And so if you're noticing your child is dysregulated, make that tough call as a parent. Say, hey, let's put this on mute for a few minutes. Let's go take a walk. Let's get a snack. Like, I'm hopeful you're working with teachers who are going to understand. I've messaged that to my parents. Like, I'm here to work with you. And so in this unique climate, just like I would do in the classroom, I tell my kids in the classroom, hey, it looks like you need a break. Do you want to go take a break for a little bit? Hey, let us know when you're feeling better and you want to rejoin us. Like, feel empowered as parents to do that at home as well. Whether you're sitting with your child or whether you're working or someone else is with them, letting the kiddo know, like, it is important for you to know what you're feeling so that you can make a decision about it. Because the last thing that's going to be helpful to their learning this year is getting to the end of every week and feeling deflated and feeling overwhelmed and feeling burnt out. But helping them name what they're feeling and making decisions about it, and then you as the gatekeeper to your home, like empowering your kiddo to say, hey, this is what we need and that's okay, let's pause school for a minute and take a break. Like, that is a powerful tool that you have as a parent during this time. So I hope that's a little bit of encouragement that, like, while we're in this weird screen world and the teachers are making schedules and agendas, like, you know your kiddos more than anyone. You are in proximity. You might be able to spot them being dysregulated before I might be able to as a teacher on the screen. And so having and feeling that empowerment to, like, make those best calls for your family in this time that is, like, right, the buzzword of the year, unprecedented. Like, there is no right way to do this e-learning because we're all making it together. And so feeling like you have a voice and choice as parents and that your kid has a voice and choice in this time as well.